Hello, welcome to this session of Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. My name is Sophie, and I'm a junior at the Marymount School of New York, and today I'm delighted to be having a discussion about tech and tech careers with Dr. Alissa Cooper, Vice President of Technology Standards and a Fellow at Cisco Systems. Talking Tech is a series celebrating girls and women in tech being recorded around the world between Girls in ICT Day 2020 and Girls in ICT Day 2021. Girls in ICT Day is an international day marked on the fourth Thursday of each April. In 2020, Girls in ICT Day was the 23rd of April. The objectives of Girls in ICT Day are to help create a global environment that empowers and encourages girls and young women to consider studies and careers in the growing fields of information and communication technologies. The Talking Tech series is brought to you by the ITU, the UNICC, and the Office of the UN Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, and is in support of Equals, the Global Partnership for Gender Equality in the Digital Age. Marymount is pleased to be a partner on this session today. And the goals of this series include to interest and inspire girls and young women with information about a range of ICT careers that can be had, bring before a broader audience some of the role model women in tech and share information about their career journeys and work, offer diverse examples of how ICT is being used to support achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and other UN goals, showcase initiatives that are working with girls to support them in ICT studies or for future ICT careers, and to provide girls and young women in tech with a leadership opportunity to represent and promote a girls in tech organization with which they are involved and to promote it to a broader audience. And so to kick this session off, I'm going to talk a little bit about Marymount, my school. The Marymount School of New York is an all-girls private school on the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York City. And to follow Marymount's STEAM, or Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math initiative, girls from all divisions use resources of 4 makerspaces to design solutions to real-world problems and work with computer code and robotics. And throughout my time at Marymount, I've really enjoyed getting to explore technology through these resources. I'm delighted to now shift to a conversation with Dr. Alissa Cooper, Vice President of Technology Standards and a Fellow at Cisco Systems. So, Dr. Cooper, do we want to talk about how did you get into technology and what was your path from then till now?
Sure, I would be happy to talk about that, and I'm really delighted to be here talking with you. So my path into technology started early. I was really into math and physics in high school, and I actually took a computer programming class in high school where we learned a programming language called BASIC, which nobody uses anymore. But I really liked the problem solving aspect, and so when I went to college, I explored a lot of things initially, but I really liked computer science the best. So I majored in computer science and I stayed to do my master's degree as well in computer science with a focus on systems design. And during that time, I had some internships where I was a software engineer. I worked at a startup back when the first internet bubble was happening in the early 2000s. But I didn't really love software engineering as much. I really wanted to think about the societal impact of technology a little bit more. So my first job, I ended up moving to Washington, D.C., which is where I live now as well. And I worked at a think tank. So I was like one technical person out of two. And then everybody else at the think tank was lawyers and policy specialists. And I helped them understand and think about the implications of technology design and the design of the internet in order to think through what the policy recommendations were going to be that the think tank was making. Through that work, I got involved in something called technical standards. So there's a lot of technical standards that underlie all of the technologies that we use. My focus was on the internet and the web and the mechanisms that we use to make devices on the internet communicate. So I started getting involved in an organization called the Internet Engineering Task Force, the IETF, where I was looking at privacy-focused technologies. And I also got really interested in research. I decided that I wanted to go do my PhD. So after a few years of think tank, I left to go do my PhD at the Oxford Internet Institute in England. And that was a great experience. It was more of an interdisciplinary kind of program. So I was, someone with a technical background, but there were people there from lots of different disciplines. I spent a few years doing that. And when I finished that up, that's when I came to Cisco, which is about 7.5 years ago. And so at Cisco, I've had multiple different roles, but I've had always a strong focus around technology standards. And I sort of rose through the ranks of the IETF as the Internet's premier standards organization to become the chair of the IETF. So that's mostly what I've been doing for the last 4 years. It's been running the IETF, which is a large technical organization, thousands of people participating from all around the world. And as of last year, I also became VP of Technology Standards, which means that I coordinate a much broader set of technical standardization activities within the company. We have hundreds of engineers who are working on standards related to Wi-Fi and automation and network configuration and voice and video and all kinds of things. Security is a big focus. So me and my small team that I run, we coordinate all of that work across the whole company to make sure that the standards efforts that we're putting in are aligned to the company strategy.
Yeah, that's super cool. I think like for me, like as a younger person, I had a lot bigger exposure to technology at a younger age than people who are much older than me. But I really admire what you've done and what you've taken throughout technology throughout your life. So, what do you like best about your job in technology?
I think the top of the list is just getting to work with really brilliant people,
Mhm.
which I'm very fortunate that I've had an opportunity to do that for basically my whole career. I learn more from the people that I interact with than I do from any kind of like self development that I do, and so that's just like such a gift. And not only do I get to work with really smart people, but it's just super diverse in terms of just like people from all walks of life come into engineering and technical standards in particular, and people from all over the world as well. And so I've really gotten a really rich understanding of the impact of technology in different cultures and different parts of the world and different sectors and so on. And so that's been really great. But I'd be interested to hear a little bit about what you like most
Yeah.
about working in technology or studying or in the maker spaces. Like, what's your favorite part of it?
So for me, well, I mentioned earlier I had like a lot younger access to technology, and I think my first instance of technology was when I was in preschool, so before kindergarten, when I was like 3 or 4. And we had like one or two like PC computers that we worked on. And I was actually talking to my mom and who was talking to my teachers after my last interview. And they said they think that's how I taught myself to read was on these computer programs on the computer, which I think is really cool. Like learning that now, I didn't know that before, but how technology has influenced my life even when I was really young. And I think I got an even broader introduction to technology when I came to my school, Marymount. And I think that's really what attracted me to come here was just the change from my old schools that I had gone to now having everyone had a laptop. We had technology classes every once a week, and we got to use all these maker spaces so often. And really in middle school, that's what kind of drove my interest towards technology. I had always loved math and science. Math is my favorite subject, and it's definitely something I want to pursue in the future. But we got to do so many cool projects that really expanded both my knowledge in technology, but I'm not really a creative person, but I learned to be creative and to push my boundaries through all those projects and that. So I think from those, that's what really pushed my interest towards technology, and something that I really enjoy to this day. Yeah. So can you share an example or one or two things maybe that you've done in tech that you're particularly proud of? An achievement
Sure.
or something like
Yeah.
that?
So I think the one that comes to mind first for me always just requires a little bit of explanation, but I'll give it a go. So about 5 or 6 years ago, the U.S. government made an announcement about a contract that they had held since the dawn of the internet, and it was a contract that they held with a nonprofit organization which was managing some core technical functions that allow the internet to work. This is sort of like a mapping system that maps the addresses that you type into your browser onto numeric addresses on the network, so that when you actually try to visit a website, that the packets that you send on the network get to that website, and then you get the traffic back. And so there's a small but very vital set of these core functions that from the late 90s had been managed under this contract that the U.S. government held, and the historical reason for that is because a lot of the internet technology grew out of U.S. Department of Defense funding and research that was happening in the Department of Defense. But this had always been a little bit strange because the internet in the meantime had become this huge global medium, and being used by people all around the world in hundreds of countries. And so the U.S. government announced it's time to get rid of this contract, but we want to replace it with some sort of series of oversight mechanisms that ensure that everyone feels comfortable that the management of these core internet functions will continue to be smooth and continue to function. And because of my work in standards, I was asked to lead one of the working groups that produced a key component of the proposal that we then sent to the U.S. government for what to do in the absence of this contract. So it wasn't the work itself wasn't actually technical. We didn't do any real engineering, but it was an incredibly difficult process. Involved again coordinating with people all around the world. Lots of conference calls in the middle of the night, and really years of work wrangling parties from many different sectors, governments and industry and academia and nonprofits, to try to agree on what this framework should look like to govern these technical functions. And we did it. And we produced the proposal, we sent it to the US government, they accepted it, and the contract expired and nobody knew a difference. And that was the intent. The whole goal was that there would be no disruption in the functioning of the internet on that day, and there wasn't. And that happened a couple of years ago, and things continue to work very, very seamlessly in the time since. So that to me was something that I'm proud of my own role, but mostly I'm just proud of the internet community that we pulled that off, that everybody worked together to make it happen, and that the beneficiaries are the internet users of the world.
Sometimes it's like the hardest things that in the end you're proud of the most. But I think for me, I'm definitely not at the level where you are of big things like that I've achieved. But I think some of the projects where I pushed myself the most, I've been really proud of in the end. For example, in 8th grade, we had a project where in tech class where we had to make something using sound, and it had to go through coded through our computer and eventually make sound. And so my friend and I decided to make a foosball table. And so we laser cut the sides of the foosball table and made it all ourselves. And then we programmed using like wires and tinfoil and stuff, and made it so that like whenever the players hit the ball, it made like a sound as if it was kicking a soccer ball. And there was like a goal sound whenever there was a goal, and it also kept score as well. So it was difficult, and we had a lot of wrong coding and stuff like that. But in the end, it's something that I never beforehand would have thought I could do. So yeah, in the end, I was pretty proud of that. But yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I even from school, I still remember projects like that where it's like it's not natural for me, or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just hard, and like in the end, you like produce the thing that you said you were going to do, and it's like so satisfying. So that's really cool.
Yeah. So what's a lesson that you've learned or a challenge that you've overcome along the way that you'd like to share or you have any advice for?
One lesson, which is maybe not so obvious, is that I have learned in my career is about picking your battles, um, and that knowing how to pick your battles is a skill, and some people have it, and some people start out maybe not having it, and it's a skill that you can hone over time too. So as you work in different kinds of settings with different groups of people, and especially as you go into leadership roles in the industry, this is a skill which is very, very important because you cannot win every battle. I definitely started out saying like, these are my priorities. Here's what I'm going to do, and singular focus. And it's totally exhausting and impossible to win everything that you want to win.
Yeah.
So you really have to be more choosy and figure out how to get people on your side for certain things, even if you disagree on other things. And so this kind of curation of, how are you going to spend your not just your hours, but like the amount of social and political capital that you have with the other people that you're working with. That's something that you can work on over time, and you can make it more intuitive than it is to begin with. And that's not something that I knew at all when I started my career, but is I have really leaned on that and has been really vital for me to do what I do and also maintain my sanity and not go crazy trying to be perfect. And so that's something I would pass on to anybody who's thinking about a career in tech or really any kind of high pressure situation.
Yeah. I think like for me, especially if you're doing so many projects in tech and stuff like that, and something that I'd never experienced before I came to my school now, I think for me it's my challenges have been pushing myself out of my boundaries just because there's so much to explore in this world, especially with tech and all that. And there's if you limit yourself, you don't know what you could have achieved in that area. And I know that's been quite a difficult thing for me to do, but I think for other people, like it's always good to explore the things that you never would have thought to explore, while still, as you said, making sure you have all the battles, making and have everything under control, which is a difficult thing. And so, my final question to wrap this up, and since this series is about girls and women in technology, what do you hope to see from girls in technology in the future? And do you have any advice for them?
So I think this is both a hope and advice, which is band together to
Hmm.
demand the culture that you want. It's still very unbalanced. So I said, I'm the chair of the IETF. The IETF is about 12% women, which means, you sit through a lot of meetings where no woman ever speaks, or where there's one woman who speaks, or I'm the only woman who speaks. And so that solidarity with other women to affect the change that you need in order for more women to be able to join you over time is really key. And I do think there's a need for cultural change still. It persists through the ages. There's many reasons why, but I really do think women banding together can do anything they want to do. And so I think for you and your generation, that is imminently feasible. That demand the culture you want, demand that nobody says anything about gender equity that is less than 50-50. Nothing is gender equitable if it's not 50-50, and demand that to be the case until it becomes true. That's what I would say. What about you? What messages do you have for other young women in tech?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to like try or don't be afraid to do things in tech. I think coming from an all girls school, it gives me like that environment where everyone is a girl and everyone's going through that same thing, that has really helped me to still pursue my love of tech and love of math and love of science. But I hope for those girls out there in the world who still love tech but aren't in the same space, I hope they can still pursue their passions in tech in general or either of those subjects to do that in this world because that's what we need. We need equitable girls and everything. So yeah.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much. This wraps up our session today for Talking Tech, Women and Girls in ICT. Thank you so much, Dr. Cooper. I really enjoyed our chat today. And thank you so much for everyone for watching.
Yeah, thank you. This is great.